Good morning, good afternoon, and good day. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're talking about a special forces approach to sales leadership. I'm joined by Scott McCarthy. Scott is a senior Canadian Army officer and chief leadership officer at Moving Forward Leadership. His leadership journey began early and saw him rise through the ranks of the Canadian Army, commanding both small and large teams in complex environments. His practical insights, shaped by his military experience, provide valuable lessons for sales leaders seeking to enhance team performance and communication. Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Rob. So happy to be here today. Excited for a chat.
Likewise. Scott, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
That's that could be the whole call right there. But let's do the Cole's Notes version. So I joined the Army straight out of high school. Like I literally missed high school graduation to sign up for the Army, which is kind of funny. And I did that because I wanted to be different. Not many people from where I was from. I'm from the far east coast of Canada originally, and not many people were joining the military per se, especially going to the Royal Military College. The irony of that is I went to the one university in college where everyone is exactly the same. I mean, we're in uniforms. Everyone has the exact routine. And here I was just trying to be different. So flash forward to 2009, and I deployed to Kandahar, Afghanistan, and I spent 7 months directly embedded with the Afghan National Forces, where I was helping train and mentor them. So 7 interesting months there. Came home, and then the Army said, "You know what? You're pretty good at this thing, so we're going to send you to your training center." So off I go to the logistics training center for 4 more years in training both NCOs and junior officers in the business per se. And that's kind of where the whole leadership, like it really struck. Like I like what I'm doing. This is interesting. And from there, I was like, hey. And then the further joke was I got bored one night and said, "Hey, let's start a podcast for fun." And then fast forward something like 8 years now, and I have Moving Forward Leadership as a full ecosystem per se of coaching, mentoring, providing insights through the podcast and such. So that's the very quick Cole's Notes version on the background of me. There's much more to it than that, though.
Well, all right. Thank you for that. Let's jump right into it. What do you mean when you talk about a special forces approach to sales leadership?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll preface it with I was never special forces, as you know. However, I spent 5 years total on what we refer to as high readiness. So 48 hours, notice to move, phone rings. In theory, 48 hours later, I'm on a plane headed somewhere, someplace for indeterminate amount of time. That was great in theory. In practicality, my shortest notice to move call was 3 hours from phone ringing to needing to be on the plane. With that time, though, in 5 years, I did get to work with special forces operators from the Canadian side, and then through the podcast, I've interviewed quite a number of Canadian and American special forces members, and from there, I realized, how did they build high performing teams? Because as everyone thinks about special forces, it's high performance teams, right? Risk is super highest that you'll ever find, as well as my 5 years of high readiness. We're constantly in and out of small team dynamics, showing up, being deployed to a small country somewhere to do something. We get a team smashed together of all kinds of different specialists, and we have very little time to hash out those four stages of team development, which is forming, storming, norming, and performing, where that's the cycle. And we have very little time. So it's like, well, how do special forces, do this? On the other side of the coin, I had a great interview with a gentleman named Tim Clark, and he talked about the 4 stages of psychological safety. And then as I kind of did my own analysis, I realized, I put the overlay to it. I'm like, this is how they do it. They build teams to the point where the team members all feel safe enough to challenge the leader. And with that, so let's think about that, because that's kind of inverse of what everyone thinks. Like, whoa, challenge the lead, challenge the boss. Well, no, that's actually what you want. So let's talk about the 4 stages quickly, and I'll explain to you why you want to go this way. So stage 1 is belonger safety. Belonger safety means that, hey, I feel comfortable here with this team, with this organization. I'm not looking to quit. Generally easy to achieve. As long as your core values are aligned with the individuals, you're good. Stage 2 is learner safety. So learner safety is where I know that if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get immediate reprimanded for it. Rather, you're going to let me know I made a mistake. You're going to help me fix that mistake so I don't make it, in the future. So in the sales environment, so if someone goes ahead and gets on a sales call, when your team members gets on a sales call, they don't land the sale. Instead of you going, oh, you drop another 2 of those, you're going to get fired. A psychologically safe environment leader would go, hey, let's talk about this. All right, where did you make mistakes? Okay, you could have said this. You should have led them down that way. You talked too long here. You didn't listen to them there, and coach them through that. So that's stage 2, right? Learner safety, helping them learn. Stage 3 is contributor safety. So now your team member not only is able to learn from their mistakes, but rather as they go through the process per se, they go, wait, now I get this idea. What if, if this part of the script, for example, we change these words here to sound a little bit different, or give them an opportunity to speak there, what have you, and push that towards their team lead. And team lead goes, great, thanks for your input. I'll look into it. Now, stage 4 is where special forces folks operate at, and that's challenger safety. So challenger safety is where they go, hey, this is a mistake. This is wrong. And you think about that in the military context, like, since when did we hear about that? Like, the movies never say that. Like the leader's always there, and he knows everything, and is, let's charge to the front. Here we go. This is the plan. But here we are. We're actually, no, this is not the plan. This is not how it actually is done. So when I talk to the special forces folks, what they do is the team lead comes up with the plan, but they go through that plan over and over and over again to the point where everyone that's around that room, that's in that team, is comfortable with the plan. Why? Well, we go back to what I talked about earlier, right? They operate at the highest risk level, i.e. lives. So what is happening is that each of the members is challenging the plan, looking for weak points in the plan, looking for areas where there might be blind spots. Like, hey, we don't know. What are we going to do in event of this? What are we going to do in event of that? This here looks pretty weak over here. Like, we haven't thought about that whatsoever. If we do this, but it's not synced with that, the effect isn't going to be what we're looking for here. So if you think about that in a sales context, it's like, hey, we're not giving our customer enough time to talk to us. We're not giving you're not selling, for example, the hole that our drill is making, but rather we're just talking about the drill. Like, we should be talking about the hole, right? And I'm sure you, as great salespeople, understand that reference all too well. That's what I mean by challenger safety, enabling your people to bring these ideas forward and challenge the status quo, challenge the plan. And one of the key things to do about that is that you, as a leader, you need to drop your ego. You need to check your ego at the door, right? And often what happens in the sales managers, which I've coached in the past, is that a lot of them, they get promoted because they're the best at what they do. They're the best seller, right? Which what goes on? Well, it inflates people's ego, whether that is done maliciously. Like, some people just simply think, oh, I'm the best. Look at me, I'm the best. I did 8 million in sales last year. I'm the best. I got all the award plaques behind me. Look at this. Oh, okay, great. Or it just does it indirectly and like, okay, I know what I'm doing, so they need to listen to me because this is how it gets done. Well, it's different when you're managing a team, because they're not you and you're not them. So you need to check your ego at the door, because you need to able people come forth with these ideas. And that's what it is all about, challenger safety, and how special operators go about it. Okay. And enabling that environment where people can go, this doesn't work, but I think this could.
Excellent. So I heard reference to safety a few times.
Yep.
What are the most effective ways to build cohesion and trust, safety among sales team members?
Yeah. So that is a great question, and I kind of alluded to the first part just before I wrapped up there, and that is checking your ego at the door. So you as the team lead, you're going to set the tone for your team, and if that is one of ego and arrogance, you're going to immediately crush all that safety that's out there, right? Now, if you look at the four stages of the psychological safety framework, they are in fact building steps towards each other. So if you look at belonger safety again, Corvette, looking at it and from a values perspective, does your company's values and your team's values align with the person's values? Yes. Okay, that's good. All right. Next, learner safety. Enabling them to learn from their mistakes. That's a huge step. That enables that trust, right? Because if I'm scared to make a mistake, I'm also scared to take a chance. And we all know high risk, high reward. But the risk doesn't come out of doing things the way we've always done things. The risk comes out of challenging the status quo and taking a jump. But if I know that if I take that leap and make that risk and it doesn't work out, I'm going to get slapped on the hand, per se, metaphorically, worst case scenario, fired. And I'm like, I don't want to lose my job. I got family to take care of. I got kids to feed. I'm going to sit here and not necessarily take that risk and not necessarily learn from it. Right. So it's that ego, it's that enabling people to take the risks, right? And actually talking about it. It's the ability to have the dialogue. You have to have the dialogue with your team. Okay. So developing dialogue with your team. And one of the mistakes too many managers do when they show up is they immediately get to work mode. All right. How many calls you got today? Who are you meeting today? What's going on? Take 30 minutes. Take 30 minutes and have a dialogue that has nothing to do with work. I show up at my office every day, and I told you before on the call there that I still, this whole leadership thing is a side hustle for me, and I still serve in the Canadian Army, and I'm currently leading the largest supply depot in the country. My first 30 minutes in the office has nothing to do with work. I'm not listening to how many picks there are, how many orders there are, personnel problems, blah, blah, blah. I'm walking around with a cup of coffee, much like this one here, walking around, and I'm going, how's your day last night? How was your night last night, Rob? How's the family doing? Kids soccer game go well? I'm asking these types of questions because I'm trying to get to know my people at that deeper, more intimate level. That's where we build trust and cohesion. Okay? Just taking 30 minutes of your day, 8-hour day, 30 minutes of it, it's 1/16. Right? It's a fraction, not even the width of a saw blade if you're in construction. Okay. And you are getting to know your people at that deeper level. And that is how you can start building that trust and cohesion. And how do you do that? That's between you and individuals. So you take this information, like I go see Joe. I'm like talking with Joe now. Like, oh yeah, how was your weekend, Joe? And he explains, like, yeah, with kids soccer tournament. I'm like, oh, do you know Rob's kids play soccer? Right? Like, no, I don't. Yeah, like totally. Like that tournament. Maybe you guys were playing against each other. You didn't even realize it this weekend. Right? And in you're breaking down these barriers and these walls, and you're aiming the connection between your team. And then once you start building that connection between your team members, what happens? Once they're connected at that more deeper level, that more intimate level, on that personal level, they start branching and are willing to go to bat for each other more so on the professional level. So suddenly you notice Joe's having a struggle meeting his numbers. Like, hey, Joe, like, notice you're having a rough time meeting your numbers there. You need some tricks. You need, what, where are you failing at? And he's like, oh, just the closing part. I'm like, okay, here, why don't you, talk to me about the next client? What are they? Oh, computer sales, do this, to do that. Okay, this is what I find that works with these type of people. You listen to them, you ask these few questions. Hey, have you checked out, Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference? That's a really good read. By the way, it's a really good read on any front. And then suddenly Rob, who's a peer of Joe's, is mentoring Joe without you, the team lead, needing to be involved. And then suddenly, Joe's starting to meet his numbers. Rob's meeting his numbers. So suddenly the everybody's numbers are going up. Why? Because you enabled that connection deeper amongst your team members. And suddenly people are no longer scared, of taking risks, bringing ideas forward, challenging the status quo. They're willing to go out on a limb. You made that connection deeper. So now it's not a competition, which we often see, but a collaboration. Let's not compete against each other, but let's compete against ourselves from last month. Oh, okay. That's totally different.
I love that. And I think the challenge for so many is that 30 minutes of making deeper connections amongst the team is not easily measured in terms of an ROI.
Correct.
And therefore, if it cannot be measured, it must not have value.
Right.
And I think that's just the wrong mindset about it. I want to pick up on something that you were referencing earlier. You mentioned a lot of first-time sales leaders coming into the role. What are the common challenges in transitioning from a sales role to a sales leadership role? And how can they be overcome with the special forces approach that you're talking about?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. The first thing you need to do, and again, I've already talked about checking ego at the door, and I'm going to even double down on that. Actually, I'm going to back up. So I'll tell you the background story, and then it will all click in. So when I graduated from the Royal Military College, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant to the Canadian Army, and we're like handing in all of our college-specific equipment that we no longer needed. And I remember there was a senior NCO there. He never realized, neither did I at the time, but he changed my life by a few words. And he said, remember, folks, you don't know squat. Use a different word instead of squat, but we'll keep this PG. Right? He's like, you don't know squat. And what he was getting at the time was that, just because we're commissioned second lieutenants, we're really we're basically still brand new recruits. We still hadn't finished our basic level training. We haven't spent any time in the real units, yada, yada. I took those words and I take that approach to every position that I hold. We change jobs every 2 to 3 years. And as I said to you, I just recently switched jobs again to the command of supply depot. And I come with that mentality is I don't know squat. I don't know anything. Now, am I dumb? No, obviously not, because I wouldn't have gotten promoted and I wouldn't have been assigned to this position. But if you come to the new role with an appreciative lens, a lens of wanting to learn, because being a manager is not being a doer, and being a doer is not being a manager. Just because you can do one thing doesn't mean you can immediately do the other thing. So you have to learn, you have to appreciate, you have to understand. Suddenly things that were not important to you are. People's lives didn't matter to you when you were just a salesperson, but now they actually do matter to you as a manager, because you need to know how to be able to work around, Rob's life, Joe's personal life, things that are going on at home, someone's kid's sick in the hospital. You think their headspace is going to be in the game? Well, probably not. But if you're just the team member, well, you just like, you're on your calls. You're just doing your thing. Like, oh, that sucks for Joe. I'm going to just do my thing. But as a manager now, you need to understand like the dynamics this is going to have. And now you have to manage your expectations. Like, okay, your kid's sick in the hospital, want to take care of you, Joe. You've been an outstanding team player. Like your numbers this month, we're going to slash them down. We're like, hey, and now you go back to the special forces ideology. Hey guys, we had to take 20% off Joe. Who's willing to, pick it up? I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up. Yeah, I'll take 5. I can do it. Right? And that's that whole team approach. But if you go with that whole ideology of you don't know squat, you have to learn, you have to relearn your whole job now because it is not the same. And you go with that appreciative lens. Okay. And there's studies that have shown 90 days. So when I showed up to my new job recently, 2 months ago, I told them, I said, 90 days, folks. I'm going to take 90 days to learn, to listen, to understand what's going on. And they're like, huh? I'm like, I don't want to change. We're not changing a thing for 90 days. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like, well, how do you want this? I'm like, how did you do it before? Like, we did it that way. Do it again. Right? Keep doing it. 90 days. Keep going. And in that 90-day time frame, what you're doing is you're looking at everything through a appreciative lens. Like, why is it this way? Why is it that way? Why do we do things this way? If I was egotistical and arrogant, I would have walked in and started smashing things down and changing things. And the org structure doesn't make sense to me. We're going to do this, and that TPS report is garbage. We're going to throw that out, and all these other things. Okay. But no, because I don't know why things are the way they are. I don't know the history behind them. Right? I could be a part of the team and get promoted in role and not understand why things are the way they are. And for a great example, so I talked to you about spending 5 years in high readiness. Those are 3 different jobs, right? So years 1 and 2 was in one job. Year 3 of that 5-year stint was in another job. And then I was promoted in year 4 or 5. I was slid across the hallway into a higher rank job. So I'm in the same organization. Literally one day, I'm in one position. The next day, I'm in a higher level position. And I still have to approach it with this framework despite knowing the organization inside out because I'm looking at it from a different angle now. Despite being my boss from years 1 and 2 now, I am now my old boss. And I couldn't appreciate from his stance at that time why he saw things the way they are. And now I see it. So even if you're promoted into the head of the same team, take 90 days. It's not going to kill you. 90 days. Understand. Learn. Be appreciative. And then that will enable you to actually lead your team. And you build all that trust because you're not there questioning them and smashing things down. Why? Because when change occurs, people get scared. Right? Regardless of how much change people love, and I love change, love to do it all the time. But at the same time, each change, there's that insecurity to it. How is it going to be? Especially when a new supervisor shows up. How is it going to be with them? Well, you build that security, that sense of psychological safety, you enable that belongership, and you start building, but not immediately smashing things down, but taking your time. And to date, I have yet to truly make a change in my current organization 2 and change months into it.
Wow. Counterintuitive, slow down to go faster.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. My weapons instructor told us that, and it still resonates, and I use it from a leadership standpoint all the time. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
So many more questions, but we're coming up against it. Scott, this has been great. How can people learn more? Where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the opportunity. So you can find me at lead.boss.com. That's my website. There you can find my podcast, which is called Peak Performance Leadership. You can check out leaddon'tboss.com/subscribe for a quick link to subscribe to it. And then finally, I also host a leadership mastermind community where people come together to talk about, their struggles and get solutions between myself and another coach military background. And that is what we call the Leader Growth Mastermind. And you can check that out at leaddon'tboss.com/mastermind. So there's 3 links for you. Or hit me up on LinkedIn or wherever. I'm pretty much everywhere.
Fantastic. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at SalesTV.live/newsletter. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and everyone here at Sales TV Live, to our guest Scott, to our audience, thank you all for being an active part in today's